Today I'm going to share with you exactly how I made this macrame owl wall hanging. Now this is an advanced macrame pixel, which means I'm not going to walk you through each individual knot, but I will walk you through the entire process and I will share my free pattern with you. Before I share the full grid pattern that you can take a screenshot of, I would like to go over the materials. For a pattern that has quite a few colors, I prefer to use yarn as my working cords. I like the brand Scheepjes Chunky Monkey, and it is a medium worsted weight yarn. And I will link everything I possibly can in the description box. And for my filler cord, I'm using single strand cotton rope. Now the absolute crucial thing you need to know whenever you're creating a macrame pixel wall hanging is that your working cords have to be half the size of your filler cords. When you're tying your vertical double half hitch knots, you want your knots to resemble as close as humanly possible to a square, just like your grid pattern. If your knots aren't perfectly square, then the image of your pattern will distort. And one more thing, if you plan on mounting it onto a piece of wood like I am, you would need to create kind of what I call headspace. And what that means is that before I start my actual pattern, I'm going to do 2 rows of solid black. The reason for this is when I go to attach my macrame onto my piece of wood, I don't lose any of my pattern. The 2 black rows is what I'll lose and not my actual image. I truly believe that the macrame owl is the quintessential macrame project. When you think of macrame, or at least when I think of macrame, I always think about the macrame owl. When I was a kid growing up, my family didn't have a lot of art on our walls. If we did, it would just be a standard painting. I think we had like maybe 2 paintings. But what we did have was a very old 70s macrame owl. I think my mom's friend made it for her one time. And my 6 or 7-year-old self was absolutely fascinated by this owl. In fact, one day, and don't tell my mom, although I think she already knows, I took it apart. At first I only untied a few knots, but then I untied and retied that owl so many times that I could make the whole thing all by myself. That is how macrame started for me. So at this point in creating this wall hanging, I asked you on Instagram what you think it is, because without looking at the pattern, it's kind of hard to tell. A lot of you couldn't guess what it is, and I don't know why, but I think that's so funny. Most of you guessed a wolf, and now I'm kind of really interested in making a wolf. So let me know in the comments below if you want me to make a wolf pixel wall hanging. But yeah, anyways, I thought that was fun. Now, there's a reason why I chose to do a macrame owl on Halloween, and it's kind of a funny story. When I was a kid, I grew up on a small hobby farm. We had 5 acres, I had a horse, a goat, and like 5 chickens. I absolutely miss that place. We lived there for quite a long time. Anyways, I must have been 6 or 7 years old, and I was on the back porch playing while my mom was cooking dinner. When suddenly I see my dad come running from far back of our property. He was running so fast, he was sprinting. I have never seen my dad run that fast before. He came up to the back porch, he ran up the stairs, and he had this wild look on his face, this terrified, wide-eyed look. And of course, I was very scared for my dad. I thought maybe he was being chased by a bear or something. But when I look back, there was nothing. There was absolutely nothing behind him. So, very concerned, I asked him, "What's wrong, Dad? What's the matter?" And he looked at me dead in the face, very serious, with his eyes wide. And he said, "Owl." And I thought that was so funny. That very night before dinner, I found out that my dad is terrified of owls. Now, when my dad tells the story, this owl was directly above him. It had a massive wingspan about the size of his arms, and it was looking directly down at him with large, prominent eyes. And that is exactly why I'm making this owl wall hanging. I tried to capture the menacing look that I feel like my dad saw. But to me, owls have always been beautiful. I love owls. You always think that your dad is not afraid of anything, but little did I know, my dad is in fact afraid of owls. But to be fair, the apple does not fall far from the tree. I am actually a little scared of birds myself, particularly crows. Crows do not like me. I get attacked on a regular basis. I actually have another very funny story about myself getting attacked by a crow, but I'll save that for another time. I am very happy about how this owl wall hanging turned out. I was really concerned about my choice of colors. I went with very bold and unusual type of colors, but I'm really glad it turned out beautiful. Feel free to take a screenshot of the grid pattern if you want to give this wall hanging a try yourself. I did design the image myself and pixelated it, so you won't find this pattern anywhere else. Now, I do have one more spooky but funny story to tell about owls. Now, not a lot of people know this, but if you know me personally, I am scared of everything. I do not like scary movies. Now, I will watch scary movies, specifically around Halloween time, but I do get awfully scared and have a hard time falling asleep afterwards. Anyways, one night I decided to watch a scary movie. The movie I watched was called The Fourth Kind. It had that actress in it that she was in Resident Evil and The Fifth Element. What's her name? Mila Jovovich? I'm not sure if I'm saying her name correctly, but you know what I mean. Anyways, this movie is about aliens. It's based off of a true story or true events. Now, without going into great detail about the movie, this movie is about a woman who got visited by aliens almost every single night, and each night before she got the visit, she would hear an owl hooting. Anyways, I watched this movie late at night, and before I went to bed, I took the dog outside, and I kid you not, there was an owl right there, right close to me, right before bedtime. And it was a big owl. What are the odds that that would happen? It was huge. And no, I did not get any sleep that night. Okay, so after carefully not hurting myself, I'm going to attach these sawtooth hangers onto the back of our wooden mount. Normally, I like to add fusible fleece onto the back of my macrame wall hanging before I attach it onto my wooden mount. However, I didn't have any in black, so that part is going to have to wait. Make sure you level your wall hanging before you cut it. Just because it looks like it's hanging straight doesn't mean it's perfectly level. So make sure you level it and then make your final cut. And my last step is I tie an overhand knot and then cut off the excess rope of where we tied our lark's head knots. And then I seal it with a little bit of E600. Thank you so much for spending time with me today. If you love this macrame owl portrait but want to try something a little bit smaller, feel free to check out my macrame pixel playlist. And as always, I'll see you in the next one.